Welcome to the Curious Advantage podcast, an exploration of the idea of curiosity and its increasing importance for thriving in the digital age, from the authors of The Curious Advantage.
Welcome to the Curious Advantage podcast series. The Curious Advantage is about how individuals and organizations use the power of curiosity to drive success in their lives and organizations, especially in the context of our new digital reality. I'm here with Paul Ashcroft, one of my co-authors.
Hello.
I'm Garrick Jones. We've also written this book with Simon Brown. Curious Advantage brings to life the latest understandings from neuroscience, anthropology, history, and behaviourism about curiosity and makes these useful for everyone, telling stories that everyone can relate to. At the heart of the book is our model of curiosity, which we call sailing the 7 seas of curiosity. And this model provides individuals with a practical framework for how to be successfully curious and use curiosity as a power skill to unlock their own potential. And today I'm delighted to say we're joined by Theo Anagnostopoulos, who is going to be talking to us about community, coming from a man who is deeply involved with community, both online and off. Welcome, Theo.
Hi, nice to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the communities you're involved in?
I'm a scientist. In fact, I'm from Greece, but I did a lot of my studies in the UK. In the 90s, I studied molecular biology and genetics, and I did many years of academic research. While doing my postdoc, I realized that when I was at parties and people would ask me, okay, what is your postdoctoral research on? Then I would say, oh, it's simple. It's on the DNA sequence variation on the human XQ22, which is the human X chromosome. And then they'd say, oh, that's fascinating. What else? What else do you want to talk about? And they would change the subject. And this kind of was the motive for me to start thinking, okay, how can we get people to engage with scientists? How can we get people to understand a little bit of science?
What were the most important principles about scientific dissemination that you became aware of?
It's the fact that the people, the citizens, need to get a deeper understanding of a little bit of basic science and how this connects to our everyday lives. So, for example, one of the major issues is obviously climate change. Climate change seems to be much more straightforward these days, and it's at last is attributed to humans mostly. Well, it wasn't in the late zeros or the early tens. So it's a topic that took a great while of effort for this to disseminate across. Another topic which it's in the news nowadays is the anti-vaccination movement, which peaked in 2016, 2017 because of all the fake news and all the the great anti-vaccination movement which arose in the social media. A third and even more far-fetched example is the Flat Earth Society. Which is, it might sound amusing, but there is a conference every year in the United States for the flat earthers.
You picked 3 quite big examples and quite varied examples there, Theo. So we've been talking about curiosity.
Okay.
Could I ask you, what does curiosity mean for you, and what's the role of curiosity in the dissemination of science and scientific ideas?
I think if I were to use one word, I would say that everybody is born a scientist. Everybody is born curious. Now, somehow society manages to delete that option. Society dictates how we should behave, how we shouldn't be scientists any longer. So to elaborate on this, you have the little kid, the little baby that they're testing around everything that is on them, around them, anything that they can touch. And then you've got the parents, the system, the society saying, oh, don't do this, don't touch this, don't pull this, try and do it this way. And then you have the school, which everybody needs to sit down on a chair, everybody needs to obey, be quiet. What I'm saying is that somehow we have this, as I call them, the social software, which is actually downloaded into our hardware, the early humans, we become less of scientists, less curious somehow.
I met a neuroscientist the other day who was talking to me about gossip. And they had shown that when people gossip, it fires the social parts of our brain. And one of the theories that they had was that when we hear gossip, we might be hearing information that is useful to us or might be useful to us in a safety situation it might be contextual. It might be something about people that we didn't know. And that might be useful information to us, which allows us to connect with people, which is why it's so compelling.
This is what Yuval Harari says in Sapiens, that gossip could be the one differentiating factor from Homo sapiens to the other species that, created the communities.
Let's just talk as scientists, right? If you're dealing with the kind of belief sets that the world is flat, from a scientific perspective, that doesn't make any sense. But of course, people connect with information emotionally, not necessarily rationally. How are you using communities, or what is your view on stimulating the curiosity of people to get to a point where they understand things from a rational perspective?
Okay, this is a very nice question. I like it a lot because it's the deeper meaning of our work. As you said, it's not the lack of information and the rational way of communicating them. For example, The Inconvenient Truth by Al Gore has been out since 2007, and it terrified a lot of people. It was giving all the facts about the destruction of the climate and eventually the planet, with all this data and facts, and people were just rejecting it. So for us, the mechanism is to create engaging, fun, educational methods that will not necessarily seem as teaching, but it would feel more like an engagement. As an example, we created the first science festival here in Greece back in 2014. And now we're running about 6 of them all around the country. We've got about 50 or 60,000 visitors collectively every year. And when they go to that fair, they don't necessarily go to learn science, but they go to have fun. Now, learning a little bit of science is a symptom. It's something which comes out of this experience. Another example could be we have a show on YouTube which is called Celebrity Science, and basically it's something that I host, and you've got a celebrity on one side and a scientist on the other, and they're playing games. Comedy is used very much there, and comedy is one of the most serious forms of communication.
Sounds like you're using a number of different techniques when you're working with different types of communities.
Exactly.
How do you keep them curious? You said at the start that we're all, as born scientists, we're born at least a little bit curious. But how does being in a community help us stay curious as we get older?
Well, it only can be done by gamification and by not having a lecture type of approach. What we do is edutainment, education and entertainment.
And do you find as you get communities engaged in the content, how do they start to learn from each other? Do they start to feed off each other and then start to develop ideas and develop the topic further themselves? How do you see that play out?
This is a very difficult question to answer because it has to do with the social impact of our work. Usually the social impact of any type of education, including science communication and engagement, takes forever to monitor, and it's hard to monitor as well. Sometimes you see the impact without having foreseen this as a way of seeing it. For example, we learned that one of the students who attended one of our science festivals and displayed his homemade robot was identified by the US ambassador in Greece, and he liked it very much, so he connected him to the MIT. And now he's studying at the MIT first year. This is something which you cannot record by a questionnaire.
A curious culture is a game changer. What does curiosity mean for you? Follow #CuriousAdvantage and join the conversation.
I'm interested in going back to what you were talking about, edutainment, and what you were talking about having fun in these communities to enable engagement and not treating things as lectures, but having lots of different experiences within the community, whether it's online or not. Again, thinking about the neuroscience of this, we know that when we have fun, it releases dopamine and it releases oxytocin into the brain, which are kind of love chemicals. But these neurotransmitters have an impact on laying down memories and are really powerful to enable us to create new links in the brain, new links that create new contextual ideas, or links that kind of reproduce the contextual information from another system. It's the idea of these chemicals being laid down when we have fun together in a community that are really a huge part of how we learn and how we move forward being curious. How do we do that online if all of this is moving to digital and digital learning and digital curiosity, if you like? What are your thoughts, Theo, about how we can ensure that we having fun in communities in an online context?
We've run one major program all around Greece, both physically and digitally, and we realize that the best result comes out when it's phy-gital.
Phy-gital, that's a physical and digital? What does phy-gital mean?
Exactly, this is what it is. Let me give you this little case study in a few seconds. We are training the trainers, the scientific trainers of remote areas all around Greece, and we train them into STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths. We start by doing this physically. We send educators there and they train them. And then what they have to do is run a program for 10 weeks out of school and create technological innovators, teenagers who are technological innovators, okay? That's the aim of the project. We run this for 2 years physically, and we think, okay, this is great. They've produced 200 projects, which are very useful for society. How can we extend the reach of it? How can we make it national? And then we start a platform which teaches STEM online. And we run the platform for 1 year without having the physical part. And we see that the number of projects being created, for example, even though we go to the whole of the country, is almost as similar as before. So we realize that, people, maybe the culture isn't ready to go 100% digital, or you still need the educator in the classroom, but somehow use some of this time or knowledge by having acquainted it digitally. So it's a hybrid model which basically uses both educators and digital knowledge.
How does this work in practice? What's the experience of the learner in this situation?
It's pretty good, actually. We still do the physical training of the teachers, but we provide a lot of DIY workshops, a lot of experiments on this digital platform, and a lot of the communication between villages and towns with online tools. So a lot of the thinking and the cross-collaboration between teams of students and teenagers is done digitally, and this helps very much.
You mentioned the book from Al Gore around climate change, and that perhaps it's not enough just to provide the information. What we need to do is really mobilize a community around that so that they start to unpack it for themselves and explore it and start to disseminate it further. Do you have any experience or ideas about how that works?
Well, I have an experience directly from Al Gore, because I was amongst his first, 500 ambassadors. He trained some people personally to go and spread his messages. So he did exactly what you're saying. He tried to empower people to convey his message and basically clone himself in a way. But it didn't work so much, because we went around and we started giving the same lecture. I don't think that at the time the society was mature enough, ripe enough, so that they would engage so much more with this huge issue. I don't think it's ready now. There's major political decisions that are happening that are against the climate at the moment.
Often society always rejects new big ideas.
And, and there's always, I like the idea of waves and counter waves in new information moves through the system of humanity. Every time you have a great wave of information like Al Gore put out, you might get a backlash until you get a general consensus within the population about what the belief set is, and it becomes homogenous. It's a little bit like viral. It's a little bit like viral infection of ideas.
Yeah, and it really has to touch, as you said earlier, the emotional part of the citizens. So I will give you a second example on something which is related to climate change. 2018, we had wildfires in Athens, really strong wildfires that killed 100 people. That was unprecedented. We, as SciCo, the organization that I'm involved with, we thought, okay, let's call all the citizens, and we posted on Facebook and said, anybody who has any idea about innovation regarding how we can prevent wildfires, how we can alarm people when they're on, how we can show escape routes, etc. So anybody who is related to engineering or technology or forests, they should come to our offices and we will create technological innovations to combat this issue.
So this was going on during thing as a kind of social response to this.
Yeah, we started it here and became viral big time, and there were hundreds of people who came to our offices on that particular day, and this was the first so-called citizen science project in Greece, that people responded to something that they knew for decades that is a consequence of climate change.
Yeah.
But they only acted to it when it actually became tangible and related to their neighborhood and their friends who burned alive.
Yeah, very sad. But also human nature, the idea that, things go viral and people mobilize when they are tangible and they feel that they can be affected by them.
You're listening to the Curious Advantage podcast, inspired by the book The Curious Advantage, written by Paul Ashcroft, Simon Brown, and Garrick Jones. The Curious Advantage book is now available to purchase on Amazon.
It's such a great opportunity to talk to you, Theo. Curiosity is powered by the community. That's what we think. And social learning and experimentation is at the heart of creating a culture of curiosity. And I've been fascinated to talk with you and hear your views about the importance of having fun in the community, the importance of how that lays down new pathways in terms of learning, the importance of being in a community, an online community or a physical community, and your wonderful concept, phy-gital, which I'm going to use from now on and I will credit you with. It's fantastic. And then to think about the power of what is it that makes information go viral within a community? What is it that allows the tipping point to take place and for things to infect everyone else? And part of that is tangibility and people feeling that it's real to them. Don't you think, Paul?
Yeah. And providing those feedback loops and evidencing things that are meaningful people in their own lives. So that's what I've heard you talk about, Theo.
And so from us, Theo, what would be, if you have some messages for us and our listeners on this podcast, what would be the things you'd like us to take home?
One more little thing I would like to add prior to the messages, which has to do with the curiosity of the society. This topic has been thoroughly investigated, and the collective intelligence of a group increases via various ways. One is the way that you allow people to talk and express their opinions. The other one is the mixture of those people. For example, collective intelligence is meant to increase when there's a higher number of women, for example, in the group, because it increases the social perspectiveness. Another thing is diversity increases very much this curiosity.
I'm sorry to interrupt. That's just amazing. The idea that collective intelligence increases with the kind of the diversity of the community. That is so important, that piece of information, and that it increases by the kinds of people that you've brought together to enable that to happen. Just wonderful. So back to the take homes for us there.
I think the take-home message as a scientist, I would have to say that we should try, for the younger generation, we should try to listen to them more, let them express their feelings and their curiosity as much and as long as they can, without having us trying to restrict them. I remember, for example, this is a really good example. We were called by the teacher of our son when he was 6 or 7, and we were said, "Oh, you know what, your kid, there's an issue with him." I said, "Why?" He says, "He doesn't draw into the frame." And I said to my wife, "Is this a problem? Because I think this is wonderful."
Exactly what you're looking for.
I agree. Exactly.
Imagine if, I don't know, Pollock was drawing into the frame.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's about keeping it open for as long as possible, it seems.
Yeah. So this is it. Keep being curious, basically.
Keep being curious.
Wonderful.
Theo, it's been a pleasure to speak with you today about curiosity and about community. But I feel we've covered a lot of ground from neuroscience and how curiosity is impacting our society. So thank you very much for joining us on this podcast.
Thank you.
This has been another podcast all about curiosity and the curious advantage from Paul Ashcroft, from Garrick Jones, and in his absence, our co-author, Simon Brown. Thank you for listening. We look forward to next time.
Thank you for listening to the Curious Advantage podcast. The Curious Advantage book is now available to purchase on Amazon. This podcast is produced by Aliki Palinelli and edited by John McGinty and Jill Damatak-Futter.